Welcome back to One on One. Lou Orlando joined alongside Nick Palmer. It's an honor to be joined by two WFUV greats, Ryan Ruocco and Justin Shackil. Both came up at the station together, were roommates. Now they're calling Yankee games, and now for every part of baseball history, on the call for Domingo German's perfect game. Ryan on TV for Yes, Justin on the radio for WFAN. Guys, to share this experience as best friends, could you dream up of a more perfect scenario?
No, I mean it's ridiculous. It definitely it was a super impactful thing for us to consider because we were both considering it as the game was going on. Like we both were realizing, wow, I'm not only getting to call the perfect game for the Yankees, but so is Justin. I know Justin was thinking the same, like, oh wow, Ryan's getting two in the booth next to me too. And it's super surreal. I do have to admit one thing. We actually weren't roommates. That has been published a couple times now, which is funny because it's like, the story takes on a life of its own. But we are as close of friends as roommates. And Justin has stayed over on my couch at 2489 Belmont in college.
Yeah. And roommate.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you couch on the couch, that's a roommate.
And my apartment in the city, and multiple apartments in the city, and my house now in the burbs. So we basically are like roommates. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, for two ridiculously close friends who not only are close friends, but, forge this dream together at the same time, in the same years, at the same place, learn from the same mentor, Bob Aarons, and have the same team in our soul. And then to get to be there in the ballpark on the same night, calling this momentous occasion, which is maybe the rarest feat in all of sports, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just calling a perfect game itself is unbelievable. But the fact that I got to share with one of my best friends in the world, it definitely is the thing that I will always hold most dearly to me from that night.
Yeah, I'll say that I haven't seen my actual college roommate since college. So I was over Ryan's apartment probably just as much as I was in my own apartment, Ryan with our other great friend, Bobby Coyle. But yeah, the whole night, just really tough to wrap your head around it. It is the most rarest feat in all of sports, a perfect game. And then I think about where Ryan and I were as students at WFUV, going to the old Yankee Stadium and having some experiences there as a member of the media and just learning and having that training ground. And then you go through all the years, how each of us kind of paved our own little path for ourselves to get to that booth in Oakland on June 28th. It was just wild, absolutely wild.
So I know we heard all about Domingo calling his wife and family all after the game, staying up late as he deserved to do. We heard about Boone celebrating, but I'm really curious about you two. What was that evening like for you guys? Did you stay up late calling all your friends, or was it more of like a, let's sink this in and experience this together?
So it's tricky because we're on the West Coast. So you have the West Coast time factor in there, the time difference. We also had the quickest of turnarounds. It was a 12:37 local time first pitch the next day, and it came on a getaway day. So we were traveling right after that game. There wasn't much time to have the moment really sink in. We did make sure that we try to, get the group together, the Yes crew, people from behind the scenes, Jeff Nelson, who was Ryan's color analyst that night, Meredith Morakovitz, our producer, Josh Isaac, Luke Miller. We all went across the street to another hotel for a quick celebratory drink, but there really wasn't much time to, really appreciate the moment that night. But it's been following ever since, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because we were like, we all knew we had the quick turnaround, and we were also at the ballpark longer than normal because after the game, because we all had a lot of, I'm always on the first bus out, and I was one of the last people on the second bus because, after the game, I did an interview with Sports Center, and to your question about what did we do, I did call my mom and dad from the booth once I got done with all my post-game obligations. And it was emotional for me calling them. Like I started to break down at the end because, I remember my mom used to always think like, oh, like it'd be so cool if he could just go on the field someday, and then to like, my favorite childhood memories, the vast majority of them are me at Yankee Stadium in October with my family. And, those incredible late 90s Yankees teams. And to then know your voice is going to be attached to this historical Yankee moment forever, and to have experienced it was, I mean, it was so surreal, and it really hit, and it felt like this communal experience because of the way people were so excited for us. I think that was so cool, like feeling the way, my parents were so excited for me too in that moment, like, and sharing it with them was emotional. And then like Justin had texted like, don't you leave the booth don't leave the stadium without us getting a picture, which I'm so grateful that we did. And so we took a great picture, with both of us holding our scorebooks, which we both since had signed by Domingo German and Kyle Higashioka. And yeah, and so then we went and got it. It was funny too, because I remember we were waiting in the lobby. Justin was just dropping his bags. We were waiting in the lobby to go across the street and grab a drink, because we were like, okay, we know we got a quick turnaround, but obviously we got to get a drink to celebrate this. And Justin was taking forever. And I'm like, Meredith's like, where is he coming? Like, Jeff's like, is he coming? Like, let me call this guy. But I think Justin had maybe just called Allison, right? Up in the room.
She was asleep, and then somehow
and then she wasn't.
She woke. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. That's usually what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my wife was asleep.
Mhm.
So I just I had taken a video from the booth just so I could have some moment, like a message to her from that moment. But what's crazy is, to Justin's point about, so we had some drinks across the street, just a couple though. And then came back, and like, I remember waking up the next morning and seeing a text from Justin at like 1:30 where he was like, I'm still buzzing. And I went to sleep okay, but then I got up at 6:20, and Justin and I had interviews like all morning with different people and publications and stuff like that. I know Jeff Nelson did as well. And it was really cool, but it was funny, like basically just like going into that next game, it was just riding this like wave of adrenaline. And the high from that game lasted like a week. Like I had even though that night was short, like Shaq was saying, there was like a crazy buzz and high from that game that lasted like a week for me.
Yeah. So I will say that we had, I mean, the best way I was describing to people is like that feeling that you have in your tummy when you're at the amusement park going down the big slide.
Yeah.
I didn't reach the bottom of the slide for a solid week. It was incredible.
That's a great analogy, man. I like that.
So you guys just talked about how you got your scorecard signed by Higgy and Domingo, and obviously you're breaking signature policy there. So when you went down to get them signed, did you say anything to them? Did you even have time to get a word in? And if you did you just like congratulate them? Because I assume they were all celebrating.
So it's interesting because obviously that does break policy. But like for a unique scenario like that, and especially for people who've been embedded with the organization for a while, it felt like okay. But I Shaq, I don't know how you did it, but I went to Jason Zillow and I just said, Yankees PR director, who I've been friends with for a very long time, and I was just like, hey man, I was like, I know we're not supposed to do this, but like I need to get Domingo and Higgy to sign my scorebook. Like, what's the best way to go about it? And so like we just kind of did it discreetly. Higgy and I have a phenomenal relationship, so I just kind of like saw him on the field the morning after, and I was like kind of telling him, I was like, bro, do you realize like that's Yankees history forever? Like it's Larson and Yogi Berra, it's Wells and Posada, it's Cone and Girardi, it's going to be you and Domingo. Like there's a famous photo of the 6 pitcher-catcher combos from the last night at the stadium, the old stadium, because it's the perfect game battery, like, and he's like such a chill guy that like, he's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like Shaq, you could see him saying it like that. Right. Like, and so then I was just like, I had said to Jason, cause I saw him alone in the field. I was like, hey, can I just like ask him? He's like, yeah, just do it discreetly. But yeah. So I just asked him then, and he was like, why is it even a big deal? Yeah, of course I'll sign it. He was like totally cool. And then Domingo had like a horde of reporters around in the morning after, but I wasn't going with the team on to St. Louis. and I really wanted to get it done before I left. I was going to LA. And like after the game, even though I had kind of a tight flight, I went down and Jason, like, well, the media was talking to whoever pitched that day. Maybe it was Clark Schmidt, I forget. Like Jason was like, hey, you can go like over there now with Marlon Abreu as well. And Domingo was happy to sign it. So I don't know how you did it, Shaq.
I waited a few more days only because I was going to be in St. Louis. So I waited for the dust to settle a little bit, but same thing, did it discreetly, went through Jason. He hooked it up. Both players obviously understood. It was funny. They kind of saw the layout of my scorebook and they just took time to study it and see what was going on and what, some of the notes that I had, because I definitely left it untouched from that night. And this was a few days that followed. And Kyle Higashioka, he's an astute individual. So he was just observing, and it was interesting to have him pour over that. But yeah, Kyle's great. I asked him, I think I saw him in the lobby the next morning before we were going to the game, how many hours of sleep did you get? Did you sleep well? And he's like, actually, I think I slept great. So that was just hours after catching a perfect game. But Ryan's right. Kyle Higashioka, Domingo German, they're going to be linked forever. They're going to be associated with Coney and Wells and Posada and Girardi. They're going to be doing those appearances, autograph shows, everything that you hear David Cone, David Wells do. That's going to be part of their lives for the rest of their days. It's really cool to think about for them.
Shaq was funny. Well, first of all, if you look at our two scorecards, Shaq's is so neat and tidy, and my handwriting is just abominable. And one of our bosses at Yes, Jared Boschnack, he saw the picture. He's like, I just got to give an evaluation. There's a big difference in the handwriting here. But on my boards, because what Shaq was saying, you want to leave them untouched. I have it in the left side of the left page, which was the Yankees offensive page for me. It's there's this little note, and I wrote Linden Cherries. And so on my board, Linden Cherries will forever be on there. And it was a note to myself to remind me to bring up on air that Shaq and I, as we were about to come up to the press box, we saw this guy carrying this huge box of cherries. And we were like, what is going on here? And he was like, this is a gift from the Chamber of Commerce, Linden, California, hometown of Aaron Judge. Best cherries in the world. These are for the Yankees clubhouse. You guys want some? So Shaq and I took a couple cherries, and they were fantastic. They were amazing cherries. But so I wanted to tell this story on air. So now on my game boards that I'm going to have framed or whatever else, I have this little Linden Cherries note on there because I wanted to remember to tell the story on air during the game.
I wanted to ask about the broadcaster's jinx, because Ryan, I know you made a point to not use the word perfect the entire game. Justin, I know you did. Was that something that you guys had ever thought about? If I got into this situation, I'm going to say it, I'm not going to say it. How did that kind of turn out for you guys?
Shaq, I don't know if you want to go first.
No, go ahead.
I definitely have thought about it, and I always thought I would say it. But I had remembered a conversation I had with Dave Sims, I think when I was in college, where he was like, well, Dave Sims, a broadcaster who I respect a ton, and Justin and I are close with him, and he used to always listen to our work and evaluate it. And it was early on when I think he got the Mariners job, and he was like, you don't need to say perfect game. You can say 21 up, 21 down. You could say he's been immaculate. You could say he's had no base runners, whatever, right?
I was very impressed with Unblemished. Unblemished was a great pick.
Thank you. In the fourth inning, I think, I went to the thesaurus for immaculate, and I got some other words that I could use throughout the broadcast. But I thought, I was I'm only going to do this if it feels natural. If it feels I'm not telling the audience what's going on, then I'm just going to say it, and I'd never worried about the announcer jinx before, because you have to say it, right? But I just I was doing it. And then my buddy, Bobby Preddy, who Justin knows, who's an amazing Yankee fan. He was like, this is artful the way you're doing it. You could keep going with it. So I was like, all right, I'll keep going with it. Let me see. But what's funny is in the aftermath, I talked to Dave Sims, who's called 2 perfect games now. And he was like, oh yeah, no, I scrapped that. I say it. I always say perfect. I want the audience to know. And I'm like, okay, well, but I think it worked. It ended up working out. And I think fans got a kick out of it, because it was kind of adhering to their superstitions. even though as I was doing it, I was like, should I really be doing this? All right, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, I didn't give myself any room to really think about it, because after the fifth inning, I just said Domingo German's perfect through five. So right then and there, I could only go with it the rest of the way, and I did. Doing obviously the game with Susan Waldman, and she, I think, started to say it maybe about 2 innings later, but she was saying, "Hey, if if you're up and you're watching, wake others up, because something special is happening here." And I just think fundamentally, you're on the radio, especially you are an informer. You need to let people know, inform and educate, and obviously entertain for the listener what's happening. And
yes,
there's no sugarcoating that on the radio. So it's a little bit different. And I just felt like, as the informer, you have to keep stressing the fact that a perfect game is happening. So that's the route I took. I don't think there's a correct way. I think it's really cool, actually, Rye. I don't know if I've said this to you yet about it, but I think it's really cool. People are obviously making this a sub storyline of the whole night, you and I, in our relationship, and the training ground, the same training ground we had, and we took two completely different approaches to it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. That is really cool, actually, when you think about it. And I think, like, honestly, if I had to say which is correct and which is not, I would say the correct way is to say it, because you want the audience to be very clear. But, and Shaq said, especially on radio, like, at least on TV, we're putting up Yankee perfect game graphics, and we're rolling in footage of David Wells and David Cohn and Don Larson and that. So there's a lot of things that are informing the audience, even beyond my words, right? On that night, for whatever reason, I felt good about navigating it, and I was happy that I did it that way. And it felt like a fun challenge within the challenge, if you will, and I enjoyed it. But if I was, like, advising young broadcasters, I would say it, because, like, you want to make sure your audience, knows. But if you're not gonna, like, and fans, I think, did appreciate, like, the aspect of being superstitious along with them, right? Then you just got to make darn clear that you're being darn clear that he is perfect, even if you're not using the word. And that was kind of how I felt.
See, I don't know about that, because in Domingo's last start, I was texting Lou during the game, and I'm like, man, like, he has a no-hitter. I think it was going into the fifth or whatever. And then the next pitch, he just gives up a home run. So I'm not exactly sure that'll go well for amateurs.
In the fourth inning, man.
You know what's so funny, man, is, like, what happened to me too is, like, I realized I hadn't said it up until, like, through five. And then I was like, once I was in the sixth, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I can go with it. And then, like, I was like, when we were in the eighth, I was like, I can't say it now, because I've gone this long. Like, if I say it and then he gives up a hit, I am going to feel like I did it. Like, I'm going to feel that way. So at this point, I'm dug in. I'm going with it. I'm rolling with it. I'm getting to the finish line.
I love that. So right after the game, Ryan, I think you did an interview where you said history can happen anywhere. And I kind of like that you said that, because it was a random Wednesday night in Oakland, and it turned into one of the most special experiences. But I'm curious of what both of you thought about the crowd in Oakland, because it's definitely a different atmosphere than anywhere else, especially this year, where, the A's are 25-67, they have mad stadium issues. They're thinking of moving to Vegas. So with the population that was in the Coliseum, was everyone cheering for the perfect game by the time it was, like, getting up there in the eighth or ninth? And what did you think of the atmosphere in general?
I know, Ryan, that was your first time in Oakland Coliseum. That was my first time in Oakland Coliseum. I have nothing but great things to say about working there. I really enjoyed the 3 days there, and a perfect game didn't have to occur. I feel like I would still say the same thing. The fans that were there, and that night it was just over 12,000. They were incredible. And I never noticed that, oh, this terrific feat is happening in an empty ballpark. It never, ever felt like that for me. And no one left. Obviously, after the final out was recorded, it was a terrific scene. They appreciated it, and I would say it was a healthy mix of Yankee fans and A's fans. And A's fans are terrific. They're just they're a different breed. So it is unfortunate what's happening out there and their current situation. But for those 3 games, I never really know. Obviously, you have your sight lines and you're seeing what's in front of you, but the emptiness of the stadium never took me by surprise. I never really noticed. It didn't stand out for me at all. But that night of the perfect game, I thought the crowd was terrific. And if you go back and listen to the final call on the radio, you go back and watch it on TV, I think the crowd supported what was happening. It was terrific. You couldn't tell that the place was, 3/4 empty, unfortunately.
I think what's interesting is they sounded like 50,000 fans.
Yeah.
If, to Shaq's point, go back and listen to the crowd on either of our calls, and it sounds like a packed house. They're going nuts, and there were a ton of Yankee fans there. Then I think they're also baseball fans, A's fans that are appreciating, one last night of history in that ballpark, and that ballpark has seen 3 perfect games now. Catfish Hunter, Dallas Braden, and Domingo German. And so for me, what was interesting is it didn't in any way feel like, to Shaq's point, it didn't feel like an empty ballpark at all. It felt like all the tension in the crowd, the way you'd feel it if it was a packed house. Obviously it's different. I think there's always going to be differences if you're at Yankee Stadium or you're on the road, but you felt that crowd in the 8th and 9th innings, and you heard them like it was packed.
For you guys, your call on the 27th out, right? That's a call that can hear potentially for a really long time because it's such a big moment. As you're getting close to that 9th inning, are you letting yourself start to think about this is what I might say if he gets this, or do you want it to be completely spontaneous?
I start to think about that, and I start to think about, is there any phrases that I want to hit? And what was interesting is, to me, is sometimes I know, and I think about this a lot at the end of championships, because I call the WNBA finals and then I call the women's Final Four, right? And so I often think about that final call. And usually what I'll do is I'll have some different things in mind and then see how it unfolds. And then, maybe I'm using one of them or maybe I'm not, because you're still acting organically to the moment. If somebody hits a buzzer beater, you can't go to the line you had in mind, right? You're just reacting. But what was interesting is I was having a hard time thinking of anything that I really wanted to say as far as particular words or phrases. And the only thing that I thought I would want to say, I just knew I was going to use the word perfect finally in some form, and Domingo's name. I was however I get there, whatever, we'll see, it'll unfold organically, but those things are going to happen. And that was kind of the only thing that I had really committed to mentally, but I didn't know I was going to say perfection for Domingo German. I didn't know exactly how it was going to unfold. And it was, I don't know, it was a really, I don't know, Shaq, if you felt this way, but gosh, I just felt so present in what was happening then, because you just want it to happen, you know what I mean? And and because it's not, see, the difference between the example I gave is at the end of a championship, a lot of times you do know that a team's up by 10, there's 30 seconds left. I know they're going to win, right? So there's no surprises coming there, right? That's the other example versus the buzzer beater. Well, in this case, you don't know. You don't know if it's going to be a great play. You don't know if it's going to end. You don't, so it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to have it totally in a box of what you're going to do, because there's still an excellent chance that it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And also on top of that, the 9th inning happened really quick. The A's were swinging really early, first pitch. So you were forced to submerge yourself into the moment. You whatever maybe was cooking in each of our heads, all right, lock in, because again, the final out came on the first pitch from Esteury Ruiz. But going to the 9th inning, I didn't think it was ever going to happen. I've talked with David Cohn about achieving perfection, and there were 23 for a reason, over hundreds of thousands of baseball games ever played. So I never thought it was going to happen. Obviously, you're going to be ready for it. And all I kept saying to myself was just deliver the message. Keep it simple. You're on the radio. Delivering the message on the radio is going to sound the best. And that's the route I went. And that was only for the immediate call after the final out. So I just said Domingo German has pitched a perfect game. Everything that came afterward just kind of poured out. So, I said, fourth time I made sure to showcase the Yankees aspect of it. Fourth time in Yankees history, perfection attained. I couldn't tell you where that came from, but there it was. And everything that followed. Attained. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that, the emotion of the situation just kind of showers over you. And yeah, like part of it's planned, I think, but you can't plan everything out. Going to the ninth, you're obviously saying to yourself, what are you going to do to be ready for this? And for me, it was just keep it simple, deliver the message. Radio, as we know, is a beautiful art, and simplifying it sometimes is the best way. And that's how I felt in the moment.
Now, you guys do a lot of work, not just on the field, but also off the field. Obviously, Ryan, season 6 of R2C2 just wrapped up. We don't know when it's coming back. It's on hiatus. And you're not going to give us any clues. I'm not going to ask for any clues.
No,
and
Justin, I could, if you have questions, I could fill you in. The answer is we don't know. We really don't know. It may be done forever. We may bring it back at some point. We own our RSS feed. So if we want to do something, like I have a feeling we'll do something at some point down the road, but will it ever be consistent again? I don't know. Maybe we'll do like a special one-off here or there, like around CC's Hall of Fame induction when that happens someday, something like that.
Okay. And Justin, I know you're on Towing the Slab. You were on with Coney yesterday talking about Sean Casey. So I couldn't let you guys go without asking you guys a current Yankees question. And Coney really sounds like he believes in Sean Casey. Sean Casey has this philosophy of stepping up to the plate with the same approach, no matter who you're facing. And I guess for me, the concern comes with, do you think that the Yanks went a little too far on the spectrum of feel versus analytics and might suffer because of it? Or are we feeling too hot on the mayor? Or did the Yanks just make a move because they felt pressure to make a change?
I mean, we're going to obviously find out. Time will tell. Right. I think Sean Casey represents pretty much the opposite of what they had before. And that's usually what happens, right? When you make a change, you're going to the opposite end of the spectrum. So I'm intrigued. I want to see what he can bring. He brings a long track record of major league success into the dugout. Will that help him relate to some of the players that have struggled in this lineup? Some of the, high profile names that unfortunately haven't met expectations yet. You're gonna wait and see. I don't think you could, replace Dylan Lawson with another Dylan Lawson type. So this was the route that they were going to go. I think it helps that he is close friends with Aaron Boone as well. I think they've been into the trenches together. They've, as players, they've gone probably through hard times. So I think that serves them well for the current situation. I'm intrigued. I don't believe that, hey, Sean Casey's coming in. He's the white knight on the horse to solve all the Yankees hitting struggles. Bottom line is that the guys that are in the lineup, they're not going anywhere, and they need to start performing to the back of their baseball cards. So I think it only made sense to kind of go in this direction after what they had to start the season.
Yeah, I agree with everything Justin said. I think, like, to his point about the yin and the yang, even look at the way the Yankees have gone through managers. They haven't had many managers in the last, 30 years. But if you think about who they've had, Buck Showalter, super type A, like, very much like high strung, excellent tactician, obviously, but like, that kind of personality. and then Joe Torre, who was like the calm, cool, collected, right? Then Joe Girardi, who's much more like, almost like, military, super high strung, whatever. And then Aaron Boone, much more chill, right? Like, and all those managers have had, a lot of success in the big leagues, obviously varying degrees, with Torre being a Hall of Fame manager. But that's the kind of the natural yin and the yang. You go to the opposite. So, I think Sean Casey is he seems like to me the right kind of guy for this moment in time for the offense. I also think that there does have to be some sort of internal evaluation about the offensive ecosystem as a whole, because while the Yankees have had mostly productive offenses in the regular season for a long time now, they have had very similar failings in the postseason. And I don't chalk it up to all random chance. I think there's a different kind of baseball played in the postseason. And I think, just saying like, oh, the playoffs are random is like a very convenient way for analytics people to justify their decisions. And I just don't buy it. And I think if you talk to other analytic departments, like they don't necessarily subscribe to that either, So I think that there's something offensively that isn't clicking organizationally that needs to be evaluated. And I think that the Yankees are making this change is a good start for that, and hopefully it continues, hopefully it's like a change that helps spark broader offensive, production and progression, because I think the Yankees have really gotten down the pitching thing. Like it's amazing how well they pitch no matter who's hurt. And I think they just kind of need to figure out how to get the same kind of production out of their offense.
I want to tie a big bow on this. We've talked about WFUV. We've talked about the perfect game. Once everyone kind of realized, hey, 2 WFUV guys called this game, the outpouring of love, I think, was pretty crazy and pretty cool to see. And to also see like people like Anthony Pusick tweet out about Bob Aarons, to see you guys both talk about in your post this station, the fact that in one of the biggest moments of your guys' careers, that's kind of where people's minds go to, and that's where your minds go to. What does that say about WFUV and the community around it?
I mean, it's amazing. I think that one thing I'll always remember, Bob took Justin, Lou, Bobby, and I aside at one point towards the end of their freshman years and my sophomore year, which was my first year at Fordham and at FUV. And he was like, hey, or maybe it was like the next year, but it was sometime around that period of time. And he was like, hey, you guys have built a special friendship. You're all going to be competing for similar assignments now. Never forget, the friendship is more important than any of that. And I think naturally we all would have acted in that way anyway, because we all had similar value systems. But the fact that the leader of the program spoke about things that way and understood that from a value standpoint, I think really speaks to what makes Fordham and FUV different from other places. We're all competitive, but we're not going to stab you in the back. And if I find out any of you guys are doing that, we're going to come down on you, because that's not what we do at Fordham. And that's right. Not what we do at WFUV. And we help each other. And I think about the people who've helped me in this business and always looked out for me, whether it's a Mike Breen or a Michael Kay or a Chris Carino or a Bob Papa, we look at Spiro Ditas, Tony Reale, we look out for each other. And for me and Justin, for me, very simply, outside of my parents, there is no one who has been more influential in my career than Bob Aarons. It's not even close. And so any big moment I have in my career, I always think of Bob right away. And what I felt good about is like, I want Bob to feel how much he means, because he does. And I think at times, and I can say this, you guys can't, I think at times there's leadership at WFUV that didn't appreciate, fully the impact that Bob Aarons made. I don't know if they fully understood how important he was. Like, I don't know if they fully understood that the number one driver of attention to Fordham University is the WFUV sports alum. Like, nobody gives this school more free pub than WFUV sports. And Bob Aarons was the perfect steward of the program to continue what was built, way back when with Vince Scully, and then obviously the Kay, Breen, Charlie Slows, Papa, Carino, and Spiro into us, Spiro kind of starting the Bob era. So I hope he feels it. And like, I know, like for me, I'm like, it's cool that two of his students, two of his mentees have that moment on the same night.
Yeah, like I think there's a difference between mentors and, for me, like pillars to my career. Bob is maybe, one of 3 pillars that I could, think of in my career, but he's the first, bottom line. And that means more than maybe some of the other pillars. But Ryan's message about, hey, him having the foresight and seeing 3 or 4 19-year-old students and knowing what could be in front of them and delivering that type of message, I think that's all you need to say about Bob Aarons, because everything he did was for the benefit of the students. There was no other ulterior motive. It was for that, plain and simple. And I agree. I don't know if everyone realized that while he was there, but that message that Ryan shared, that's WFUV right there. Yeah, look, the tape doesn't lie. You have to have talent. When you have opportunities, you have to go ahead and nail it. But I think the common denominator between all of it is that WFUV also just produces good people.
Mm-hmm.
And where do we all stem from? Guy like Bob Aarons, now with Bobby C. So I think that's part of the secret sauce to WFUV. That's part of the heritage, the lineage. Just be a good person. And I think that is a main ingredient in terms of what set us up, Ryan and I, to be in a major league ballpark on the same night that a perfect game was thrown.
Well, a gigantic thank you to Ryan Ruocco and Justin Shackil for taking the time to speak with us, and congrats again on this awesome experience.
Of course, guys, happy to do it. It was an amazing experience and great to share everything with you guys.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
We'll be right back with more one-on-one.